Hey guys, Tom Barclay here. Thought I'd just do a video on Joao Palhinha, seeing as his move from Bayern Munich to Tottenham seems to be gathering pace. I understand that he's having a medical in Germany today being Friday, ahead of a season-long loan switch from the German Giants to Spurs with an option to buy him permanently for about £25.9 million. His wages are believed to be covered 100%, which will be not an insubstantial figure, given he was a player who signed for £46 million last summer from Bayern, so he'll be on a decent amount. But he will, provided the move goes through, be the answer to a lot of Tottenham fans' requests for a new number 6, and Thomas Frank's as well. It's a position that he's earmarked as somewhere that he wants to strengthen this summer, and Palhinha seems to be the man. He's 30 years old, which hasn't gone unnoticed amongst the Spurs fan base. Not often that they go for players that old, Tottenham, but I don't know if this marks a bit of a sea change from their recruitment strategy, or if it's just a particular deal that looks like a good one to make for a player who, like I said, went for a massive amount last summer. Last season didn't really work out for him at Bayern, hence why he's available on a loan deal. But yeah, either way, not often that Spurs sign players over 30, but he's very much seen as a player for the here and now, and hopefully can add a certain steel to that Spurs midfield, which at times was lacking last season. So I just wanted to do a bit of a sort of breakdown over what he can probably bring to the team and a bit of his sort of potted history. So rather than going right back to his sort of Sporting Lisbon days and Fulham days, let's just look at Bayern's interest in bringing Palhinha to the club, which took quite a while for it to happen. So they wanted to sign him quite strongly back in summer 2023 when Thomas Tuchel, the now England manager, was in charge of Bayern. It looked like a deal was going to get done right on sort of deadline day in September 2023, but it fell through. Fulham couldn't get a replacement in time, and the move didn't happen. He then signed a new contract with Fulham, but such is the way now with modern football, that doesn't necessarily mean that his long-term future was going to be at Fulham, which it proved not to be the case. I think it was more the case of a sort of reward for staying and a compensation for the wages he would have earned at Bayern. He had another year at the club at Fulham where he was the number 1 ranked player in the Premier League for tackles made, which gives you an idea of why Tottenham would be interested in the kind of robustness he would bring to the Spurs midfield and why Bayern bought him in the first place. So they did get him last summer for about £46 million, which is not nothing for a 29-year-old. But Tuchel had long gone by then, and it was Vincent Kompany who ended up taking over. And Kompany never really fancied Palhinha. One of the things Kompany did when taking over at Bayern, remember he went on to win the Bundesliga last year with Harry Kane, obviously winning that first title. One of the things he did was bring Joshua Kimmich back into midfield. Kimmich, obviously such a fantastic player, but also a very versatile player. He played fullback as well, but he was playing midfield again under Kompany, which meant the midfield slots alongside him, or for Palhinha to play in, were reduced. It was basically Kimmich and another. And with the likes of Pavlovic and Lima and Goretzka, Palhinha found his opportunities somewhat limited, despite being a new signing. He also wasn't helped by the fact that he picked up a quite major injury to his right adductor muscle in November, which kept him out for about 2.5 months. So that really didn't help. And in the end, he was limited to just 6 Bundesliga starts. I think the figure is something like 986 minutes in total for Bayern, only 45 minutes in the Club World Cup we've just had for Bayern Munich. And it was just clear that he'd fallen down the pecking order at Bayern. I believe he was ill a few times as well last season, which didn't help. It's not like when he played, he was particularly poor or anything like that, but he never really had any great games either, from what I'm told from guys who watch Bayern regularly. Reporters over in Germany, and that is why they're in a position now where they're happy to move on. So what will Spurs be getting? I suppose one of the question marks around a Palhinha for a player of his age is his legs and how strong they'll be now for a 30-year-old who's had an injury disrupted season. But provided he can still show that kind of physique and stamina that he displayed at Fulham at Spurs, then he should be a really savvy signing. His biggest strengths are quite obvious, from the statistics I mentioned earlier. The amount of tackles he made in the Premier League, the number one in the league the season he signed, before he signed for Bayern Munich. Tackles are a big part of it. Interceptions, I think he was third highest in the league that year as well. Keeping the ball nicely, moving it around the team. Not so much creative passes, is sort of balls over the top or threading the ball through either needle. He's not really that kind of number 6. He's more of a steely, tough tackling midfielder who keeps it moving, and has a real sense of where to be. His tactical awareness is something that has been remarked upon as one of his biggest strengths. He's a player that seems to lift other players in his team. Marco Silva had a nice quote about him, saying his attitude, commitment, and the way he lifts others around him is one of his biggest strengths, and it's not easy to find a player like him in football. I think Palhinha generally will hopefully bring that kind of quality to Spurs' midfield. Where this leaves Yves Bissouma in particular, we'll have to wait and find out. He's obviously got 11 months left on his contract. It's rare that Spurs let a player like, or many players that they can get decent money for, if they're not looking to sign new contracts, let them run down to leave them free transfers. So at this point, I would be surprised if he weren't to move on, Bissouma. Even though he's a bit of a funny one, isn't he, Bissouma? Because in April last year, you would have presumed he was definitely out the door after falling out of favour under Postecoglou. Obviously, at the start of the season, he had the misdemeanour with the nitrous oxide, which saw him have a imposed 1-game ban, and he just didn't seem like he could be relied upon. Then he came back into the fray for the semi-finals and the final of the Europa League, and played an absolutely pivotal role in getting Spurs over the line in those games. Definitely helped by the fact that Postecoglou resorted to 2 holding midfielders by then. I just don't think him on his own in a sort of 4-1-2-3 kind of formation, which was so sort of attacking when during a lot of parts of Postecoglou's time in charge, just didn't really suit him as well. When he played well, he was brilliant there in that first 6 weeks, but he couldn't really replicate that form long term. But the fact that he had such a sort of influential role in those final games did make you sort of question, when Frank came in, whether he might look to get him involved, because Frank seems to like to play with 2 holders himself. We saw that obviously at Brentford a lot of the time, and we've definitely seen it in pre-season so far. I thought it really worked really, really well against Arsenal in the pre-season friendly on Thursday, particularly with Bentancur alongside Sarr. I think I got it wrong in the video that I did the other day, saying Sarr was sort of more than number 10. I think it was more Lucas Bergvall, albeit I don't think it was as obvious in the match that it was definitely 2 holders and a number 10. It was more like a 3 at times, which is probably not surprising given the personnel that was out. But either way, I think it seems clear that Frank, who seems to be more sort of defensively minded at times than his predecessor, is going to look to play 2 holders. And so you think Bissouma might fit into that quite nicely. But I go back to the point, it's just rare that Spurs let players run down their contracts. And I would still be expecting at this point Bissouma maybe to move on, particularly if Palhinha is brought through the door, which it looks like he will be. He brings a lot of experience. My good friend and esteemed colleague at The Sun, Dave Kidd, who's our chief sports writer, who's a big Fulham fan and has been going to watch them. Despite going to all these sporting events over the years, he still goes to Fulham regularly, and I think he rates him as the best player he's ever seen play for Fulham, or definitely up there. So if he can replicate that kind of form at Spurs, he could add that real sort of grit and savviness from a tactical perspective into Spurs' midfield, which could be really, really useful, and maybe allow the likes of Bentancur, who's such a good player, but if he can have Palhinha sitting, can give him more license to get forward and really show the creative skills we know he's got, and maybe unlock the likes of Maddison as well. Because I think there were times last season where Ange really tried to get the most out of his creative players, but there were so many gaps left in midfield by attacking in that way. But maybe Palhinha has a bit more sort of nous about him, provided he's got the ability, physical ability still after a season that's been blighted by injury, to maybe let those other players sort of do their stuff, I suppose, a bit more, as Ian Wright would put it. He also has got a long shot on him as well, which we saw at Fulham. He's got a decent strike from range, which is something that we could definitely see if he does make that move to Spurs. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. It's quite, as I said, it's quite rare that Spurs look for older players. It does very much seem like a short-term solution rather than a long-term one. But maybe it's just one of those deals that's just a good one to make to do, that can really add some needed attributes that are lacking from this team going into a long, difficult season. And you presume he's a player with a lot of motivation, having had it not quite work out with him at his first sort of real big club in Bayern Munich. Now he can come to Spurs. Maybe this is, he's got that motivation to really show that he's got a lot to give still, and he can still cut it in the Champions League, which is obviously where Tottenham will be playing this season. So let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think he's the kind of player that they've been lacking for a long time? I know most Spurs fans have been earmarking the number 6 as the prime sort of role that they've been needing for over a long time. Is he the one that has got you excited? Does he make a lot of sense? Can you see this one working? And I guess we'll see where they go from here, really. I mean, the fact that it's a loan, even though if the wages are high, should hopefully mean that they've still got funds to go after that number 10 that they seem to be after. Gibbs White obviously didn't happen. I'm led to believe at the moment there was interest in Eze obviously early in the summer, but I don't know if that's still as strong as it was, or if Spurs have moved on completely. He still seems to be there to be got, Eze. Wouldn't be surprised if he ended up staying at Palace. It looks like Arsenal's probably most likely if it's to go anywhere. But I'm not hearing too many sort of positive things on Eze for Spurs right now. But let's see what happens. That number 10 position, I think you saw, even yesterday against Arsenal, as good as the performance was, particularly from a defensive solidity point of view, it wasn't like they were carving Arsenal open again and again, although that would be rarely happening in any game against Arsenal because they're such a good team. I still think the way they're setting up, they could do with more quality in that number 10 position, to give some added competition to Maddison, who's obviously came back from injury and such a good player, but a lot of games this season. So let's wait to see. But Palhinha, it's gonna. I think as a loan, provided he can stay fit and still has the capacity to get around the pitch like he showed at Fulham, then it could be a really, really smart signing. Let me know your thoughts. Cheers, guys.